I call this class the Swagger Lapel Jacket class. Now, this class was inspired by a vintage piece that I purchased in Palm Springs some years ago. So, as you can see from the photo of the vintage piece, the color makes it, in my mind, about 1955. The lapel fold line goes all the way from the center back right down to the edge. So that is, by definition, a swagger collar. It is a variation of a shawl lapel. Now you can see in the detail that this lower half of the lapel is actually a pocket. The drawback with this particular construction on this particular garment, which is from a very fancy store in Dayton, Ohio, is that it was all hand finished and the edge is quite thick. So for the article for Threads magazine, I endeavored to create something like this that had the pocket in the lower half of the lapel, but didn't have the 8 layers of thicknesses, seam allowances, and body that you see in the original. Here is my result. This is the front of the piece. Now, when you look at it, you can see that the edges of the front are not thick. That was my aim. We also have a couple of side views, first from one side, then from the other. But the object for me was to create something that looks like the original, but is a lot less thick along the lower edge. So as you can imagine, we have a lot of work to do. But first, let's talk about materials. To begin with, we want to start with the fabric. Now, what I have chosen here is this salt and pepper herringbone tweed wool. What I will do off camera is I will have it block fuse. Block fusing is not necessary, but what I found for demonstrating on a class, it makes it easier to see the front from the back. Now, this is, you can choose this as the front or the back. I've chosen this as the front. You will see the back of the fabric when I cut out the back of the jacket. You need at least 3 yards, 60 inches wide. This particular jacket eats up fabric, so it's just good to know that. Then here is the lining. Now this is it's a thin jacquard. It's not too thin. As you can see, it's sort of a Asian-inspired motif, and you want the same amount in the lining so that you have plenty to cut from. So we have the fabric itself, we have the lining. Next, the notions. The other notions, other than thread and some fusible, are shoulder pads. Now this is a raglan shoulder pad. I rather like this particular version. How it differs from a set-in shoulder pad is that on a set-in shoulder pad, you're going to have a cut edge here that would create a hard edge, and it's suitable for set-in sleeves, but this is a dolman jacket, so it needs a dolman pad. So one pair of raglan shoulder pads, and then covered button sets. We want a 2-inch diameter. Now I like this particular style. You can see it has the little teeth around the edges. I like it because it's easier to get the fabric to stay on the dome before you put the back on. And when you snap the back on, they both just snap together. You don't need any special tools. So this is the preferred covered button, 2 inches in diameter. We need a little tailoring canvas to cut bias strips for the hemming. Now, this is one of the tailoring canvas variations. Really, you can use any of them, but we're going to be needing, say, 1/2 yard, 3/4 yard, because we'll be cutting 2-inch wide bias strips to interface the hem of the jacket as well as the cuffs. And finally, you'll want some fusible stay tape. Now, this particular fusible stay tape you can purchase at gorgeousfabrics.com. What I like about this is that you have a very narrow ribbon, this is maybe 2 millimeters, maybe 3, that is stitched to a fusible backing. The beauty of this particular tape is that, well, it's fusible. It goes around curves quite readily. In our use, we're going to be staying the roll line on the jacket. So these are the materials that you're going to need. So let's begin next with pattern making. We have plenty of work to do, so let's get busy.